Recessions always happen in major markets first. As you're starting to see in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and even Orange County, including all of their submarkets, the effects are impacting office, retail, senior living communities, as well as different sectors of residential real estate. These established markets also have strong access to transit and are home to many of LA's creative industry leaders. But to offer a narrative example that most Californians are familiar with is Anaheim in Orange County, California, the home of Mickey Mouse, Disneyland, and close proximity to Snoopy, Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, also related closely. Disney is a major contributor to the economy in Anaheim and neighboring areas, and its reach extends far beyond just the park itself. These locations host restaurants, hotels, shops, and other services that cater to tourists that travel as a family. For those of you who are looking to buy a house in Anaheim, the current median house price is $650,000, and even that isn't affordable for most people. Anaheim, again, may not be affordable for all park workers. While job cuts could have more of an impact on the rental market, the average rent for a studio apartment in Anaheim is currently $1,550 according to Zumper.com. There exists a 9% decrease compared to last year. Travel and tourism are obviously huge factors in this market. Disneyland's average attendance per year is a little bit over 18.6 million. That means almost 50,000 people a day attend Disneyland. Those numbers are expected to be much lower in this coming year. Hotels have seen occupancy rates drop. Short-term rental and vacation home operators have been faced with vacancies. Anaheim's short-term rentals may not recover until Disneyland reopens. There is so much happening right now that I can stand here and talk for hours. Instead, let's get straight into it. We have a great panel to speak on what is happening in these major cities. So ready? First one up. Here you go. Oh, by the way, subscribe, like, only if you found value in this.
Mortgages and forbearances. Forbearances. With the current CARES Act extended to December 2020, the lender or loan servicers may not foreclose on you. All homeowners that are affected have been applying for forbearances, and they can even apply for an extension, bringing them to a total of 360 days of no payments. The CARES Act and the guidance from FHA, VA, and USDA prohibits lenders to foreclose on homeowners. I would suggest using this option only if you are not able to make the payment. This is because there is a misconception about this forbearance that most people don't understand. While payments are postponed, they are not waived. All those payments will be added to the balance, and the mortgage during the forbearance will keep accruing interest. Eventually, you will be asked to repay those skipped payments. So, if you are able to make your payments comfortably, bring your mortgage up to date. The ripple effect. Something that no one is really talking about is that if you are not paying your mortgage does not pay someone else. It does really affect someone else, but we don't really see it that way. It is a very delicate topic, and not a lot of people talk about it. We cannot really blame the pandemic, because mortgage delinquencies started late last year. Now that the forbearances are close to expire, we might start seeing more sales and foreclosures. This is the ripple effect when you don't pay your mortgage. Delinquencies. The real issue is that delinquencies started even before COVID, and there are currently 2 million people that are over 90 days delinquent. In Los Angeles, mortgage delinquencies over 30 days totaled 6.3%, up from 2.3% year over year. Delinquencies of more than 90 days total 4.1%, up from 0.6% in July 2019. Nationwide, all states saw increases in delinquency rates of 30 days or more and 90 days or more because of the pandemic, the data shows. States that reported the highest rates included Florida and New York, along with New Jersey and Nevada, including California.
This leads us to evictions. Many of you experienced this in 2008 firsthand, where there was a massive upheaval on the mortgage side with foreclosures, the financial side, and the eviction side. Fortunately, at the time, we were closely connected to the real estate market and were able to pick up on some major indicators that helped us sustain and overcome many of the challenges that we saw transpire in 2008, both in the residential and commercial markets. Today, in our current economic market, with talks of a second nationwide lockdown, we are slowly seeing some semblance that plagued us in 2008. If you go to the aspeninstitute.org, you'll see that the COVID eviction crisis is estimated to affect 30 to 40 million Americans who are at risk of eviction. And even before COVID, we already had a rental housing shortage. We already had an affordability shortage because rents have gone up so high. We already had markets peaking. We already had concessions emerging. We already had occupancies dipping all over the country and in various cities here in California. By the way, all of our sources will be linked to the description below, where you'll take a look at this for yourself. These sources and organizations are a great tool and help track rental housing. Right now, they're tracking rental payments and delinquencies by city, by submarket, with some great data that you can use to help you navigate through this economic climate. For instance, in 2017, the National Apartment Association detailed the need for the United States to develop 4.6 million new apartments by 2030, or it'll face a serious shortage. This was just 3 years ago, and the US obviously did not deliver on this. The major need for housing is mostly in our major cities, where it can be the most difficult and expensive to build housing. As I said, there are 30 to 40 million people that are at risk of facing eviction. Obviously, not all of them will be evicted, but there's going to be a large percentage of people that are not going to be able to stay where they are, but will stay in rental housing. What's going to happen? It's going to put more demand and pressure on rental housing. So what we have is a housing crisis, because we have people that are going to lose their homes in foreclosure or for sale, and they will be forced to turn to rental housing. So rental housing over the long term is going to do very, very well. Single family prices are not going to do very well because the inventory levels are going to increase over the next 18 months. In 2008, home ownership was at its highest point in a very long time. But after 2008, 10 million people got displaced from the fallout of the housing crisis. And what did those people do? They went into rental housing. That's why we have this big run in rental housing. That's why we've had this big demand. Increased demand leads to increased rents, which increases values. All of those things push the values up. It was a result of 2008 and the fallout from the housing crisis that created the rental demand that we're seeing now. And we still weren't out of the woods, as you saw from the article. So the percentage of the 4 million people that are going to lose their homes and the percentage of the people that are going to be displaced, they're all going to move around, and they're all going to move into rental housing. And the biggest issue governments have right now, it's actually homelessness. That's the biggest issue we face. And by the way, that was already going on. It was already going on in San Francisco. It was already going on in Los Angeles and a lot of other big metropolitan areas. And people were moving as a result of it. And they were also moving as a result of the government situation in those cities. That was already happening, and it's only going to get worse.
Like so many other things, COVID has been an accelerator for things that were already in motion. Let's take a look at how and why housing prices are soaring.
As the recession begins to happen, the indicators will show up in major markets first, as you're starting to see in Los Angeles in the commercial retail section, and then they will trickle down to secondary markets and third-tier markets. What is happening now is that inventory is super low. At the end of July of this year, 2020, inventory was only 1.5 million across the whole country, which equates to 3 months of inventory. It's the lowest ever recorded. And why is that? For homeowners, people do not want to move right away. Because of COVID, many are dealing with financial uncertainty. Many are trying to figure out how much savings do they have. Do they or do they not have a job coming out of this pandemic? And what is their burn rate on their money they have saved up? Do they have a family to take care of? Will they have any income next year? And how much equity do they have in their home? All of those things, people are taking an assessment of their personal financial situation right now, and they're hunkering down, waiting to see when this whole thing is going to be over. That's why inventory is low right now. Low inventory drives high demand, which creates a high influx of offers from buyers, which will drive the sales price higher. A report released in October by CAR, California Association of Realtors, headlining, "The California housing market outperformed expectations, breaking record high median price for 4 straight months." 1. Existing single-family home sales totaled 489,590 in September on a seasonally adjusted annualized rate, up 5.2% from August and up to 21.2% from September 2019, which was last year. September's statewide median home price was $712,430, up 0.8% from August and up 17.6% from September 2019. Because of low inventory, that's why prices are jumping right now while still in the pandemic. On top of that, all-time low interest rates. If you go to bankrate.com and look up current mortgage and refinance rate, you see interest rates as low as 2.375% on a 30-year fixed.
Talking about another challenge that many of us may face that will affect the housing market: businesses and unemployment. As of October, there is an 11.5 million job deficit that still remains. When the year started, we were somewhere between 3 and 4 million. So let's say an additional 7 to 8 million more people may or may not go back to work. But I want to show you a couple of things. In the Los Angeles Daily News, published November 16, 2020, it states, "As coronavirus resurges 8 months into devastating pandemic, many jobless Californians have exhausted their options and are hanging on to what little government support remains. Once padded by an extra $600 a week from the federal coronavirus relief bill, many of the state's unemployed say their benefits are just enough to survive, if they can get them. Inundated with more than 15 million claims since March, the Employment Development Department is struggling to keep up. The agency continues to whittle down its backlog, and unresolved claims have fallen to 542,000 as of November 11th. In its latest blunder, EDD temporarily suspended more than 300,000 of the Bank of America debit cards it issued to claimants because of suspected fraud. But the aggressive anti-fraud measure caught thousands of innocent claimants in the crossfire, wiping out their only lifeline. Now, nobody has been really talking about the small business issue. There has been a tsunami of closings. These are people that own businesses and that employ people, and the paychecks that people are receiving use it to pay rent or mortgage and car payments. This is a massive number that's not really being addressed right now, and it's going to shake itself out over the next 18 months. By that time, people will hopefully go back to work and things settle close to normal. There are millions of businesses that are just not going to make it. As seen in the news, a lot of big ones have already filed bankruptcy and are already going out of business permanently and for good. This affects the housing market because if many big retailers and shopping malls close, that means the surrounding community that depends on that job will no longer afford their rent or mortgage payment and will move out, which will provide a surplus in inventory, driving the home prices down.
I'm gonna give you 5 things that I really want you to look at. Number 1, prices are going to go down as inventory goes up. And what I would encourage you to do is really dig deep into these numbers and really look at the mortgage delinquencies by your city, state, and by your submarket. This should help you make a good decision in the future for your investment decisions. Number 2, evictions are a real thing. There's going to be a number of people that will not be able to pay their rent as a result of their financial situation. Right now, states and local governments have instituted an eviction freeze through 2020, and that loss of rental income will obviously roll into delinquencies on those mortgages for landlords. Number 3, that's just going to add to the mortgage delinquencies on the houses and on the commercial side, driving prices down even further. In addition, those renters are going to get displaced. And yes, while they might not have good credit, they will find a place to live and will roommate up if they have to. Number 4, I want you to pay attention to migration patterns. People are moving all over the place, and there are all kinds of reasons why. This is causing small bubbles in some areas and depressions in others. And try to get as much information as you can on this before you invest in the upmarket. Number 5, and finally, really take a look at these business closures. Let's say, for example, that you own a property in and around Anaheim where Disneyland is located, who already announced that they're going to lay off 18 or 19,000 people immediately. So obviously that's going to have a massive economic impact in that particular area, and not just in housing. These are workers that go to coffee shops, go out to dinner, patronize other local businesses, which creates economy in a community. Unemployment creates major financial impacts on a neighborhood and local submarkets. You often see this in military towns. When there's a massive deployment, suddenly there's a large group of people that are gone in an instant. Unfortunately, this is already happening in certain areas.
From a tax perspective, those who own a home and will be forced to sell, how will that affect their tax return? Well, many will have to pay capital gains tax on the sale of their homes. Capital gains tax is split into 2. The first being short-term capital gains and the second being long-term capital gains. Short-term capital gains are profits on assets that were purchased and sold within a period of a year or less. The profits are taxed as ordinary income. Long-term capital gains are profits on assets that were held for more than a year. Long-term capital gains are taxed according to graduate thresholds for taxable income at 0, 15, and 20%. Based on tax rates for the year 2020, if you're a single filer, your capital gains tax rate is 0 if your taxable income is $40,000 or less. If your taxable income is between $40,000 and $441,450, your capital gains tax rate will be 15%. If your taxable income is $441,450 or greater, you are subject to a 20% capital gains tax. If you're a married filing jointly filer, your capital gains tax rate is 0% if your taxable income is $80,000 or less. If your taxable income is between $80,000 and $496,600, your capital gains tax rate will be 15%. If your taxable income is $496,600 or greater, you are subject to a 20% capital gains tax. Now, in addition, many will qualify for the home exclusion rule. If your filing status is married filing jointly, you will receive a $500,000 exclusion on the gain of the sale of your home. If you file as any other status, you will receive a $250,000 exclusion. To qualify, you must meet some requirements. You must have owned the property at least 2 out of the last 5 years. You must have lived in the home you sold at least 2 out of the last 5 years. You must not have sold any other home in the last 2 years. Now, You can sell a home within the time frame, but you must not have used the exclusion rule. And lastly, you are not subject to an expatriate tax. For those who will lose their home in a foreclosure or short sale, many will have their mortgage loans forgiven. But remember, the forgiveness is not free. You see, when the debt is forgiven by the mortgage lender, the lender can submit what is called a cancellation of debt on a Form 1099-C. Whatever amount was forgiven, the amount becomes taxable income for those who receive the forgiveness, and that taxable income is taxed as ordinary income. But for the past several years, the exclusion of income for mortgage debt canceled or forgiven has been extended retroactively. This exclusion will exclude the debt forgiven on their principal residence if the balance of their loan was $2 million or less. The limit is $1 million for a married person filing separate return. As of making this video, there is no knowledge of an extension for the exclusion of forgiveness or cancel mortgage debt of your home. Meaning, if people foreclose or short sale their home and have their debt forgiven in the year 2021, those people will be forced to be liable to pay taxes on that forgiveness. Now, aside from all this, because the coronavirus caused many people to be out of a job, there is an expected high number of individuals to receive a moderate tax refund during the tax season. This may cause a bit of a boost to the economy during the latter part of the first quarter through the mid-second quarter. Many are still unemployed and will heavily depend on that tax return to survive through the spring. But as soon as the budget runs out, there will be a surge of evictions because people will no longer be able to pay their rent.
So how do you make money during this next period in 2021? Number one, the first thing you need to do is pay attention to supply and demand. Number two, pay attention to mortgage delinquencies and evictions by market and submarket, because as those numbers go up, prices go down. Number three, as Michael alluded to, watch migration patterns, as it's an excellent indicator of where the housing market is going. Number four, look for your investment options. Syndications are an excellent investment opportunity, especially pertaining to commercial multifamily value add or developments, because the rental market will become hot. So be careful not to catch a falling knife. Be careful not to buy something at its peak. Obviously, because right now inventory is really low, but inventory is definitely coming, and that's going to drive prices down in major markets and a lot of submarkets. So be very careful throughout 2021.
Thank you for spending some time with us. If you're ready for what's coming in 2021, please comment "Ready for 2021" as your response to today's topics. That way we know the message got to all the right people. You can also talk to us on all of our social media platforms or ask your questions directly on our website.
If you're enjoying this video, please just be sure to share it, like, and subscribe. Thank you.